Om. Namaste. So today we're going to continue with Vichāra-Saṅgraham, Sutras 7 and 8, dealing with the heart. Devotee, if these four, mind, intellect, memory, and egoity, are one and the same, why are separate locations mentioned for them? Mahārṣi, it is true that the throat is stated to be the location of the mind, the face or the heart of the intellect, the navel of the memory, and the heart or sarvanga of the egoity. Though differently stated thus, yet for the aggregate of these, that is, the mind or internal organ, the location is the heart alone. This is conclusively declared in the scriptures. So Mahārṣi here is talking about the chakras. The mind is considered to be in the throat chakra, while the face or the heart is the location of the intellect, depending on whether we're talking about intellectual intelligence or emotional intelligence. Similarly, the solar plexus chakra is considered to be the location of memory. So why are these all different when there is actually one internal organ, and that is the ego, the false ego ahankara, or as far as consciousness is concerned, the subtle heart, the sarvanga, which means all limbs together. Now, we have to understand that mind, although one, has different functions. So when it functions differently, it appears to act through different chakras. Just like the life energy itself. There are 7 chakras, but life energy is one. It just depends on which function of the life energy is operating, which chakra it appears to manifest through. Thus, the chakras are considered to be imaginary, in the sense that they are only a front or an interface for the life energy or the mind. Let's go on. Devotee, why is it said that only the mind, which is the internal organ, shines as the form of all, that is, of soul, God, and the world? Mahārṣi, as instruments for knowing, the objects of the sense organs are outside. They are called outer senses, and the mind is called the inner sense because it is inside. But the distinction between inner and outer is only with reference to the body. In truth, there is neither inner nor outer. The mind's nature is to remain pure, like space. What is referred to as the heart or the mind is the co-location of the elements of phenomenal existence that appear as inner and outer. So there is no doubt that all phenomena consisting of name and form are of the nature of mind alone. All that appear outside are in reality inside. It is to teach us this, that the Vedas also describe these as the nature of the heart. What is called the heart is no other than Brahman. Well, this is deep, because it cuts to the very nature of illusion. We think the senses are outside. They tell us about the world. But mind is inside, because we use it to think about the impressions that we gather through the senses. But is this really true? It's only in relation to the body. So again, as long as we maintain the thought, I am the body, It makes sense to discriminate between inner and outer. But as soon as we transcend the imaginary idea, I am the body, the sense organs, the mind, and ultimately the false ego, then there's no difference between inner and outer senses. There's no distinction anymore, because only the surface of the body was the boundary. So looking at this all as illusory existence, that makes it clear that the life is situated in the heart, which is the source of all energies of the body. The heart is also the seat of ahankar, the sense of false ego or false identity. You can exchange the words ego with identity. They're purely synonyms. So when we talk about ego, what we really mean is the concept of who am I? Identity. If our idea of who we are is about the body, then there's so many distinctions we can make based on the body. The different chakras, the different senses, or if we think of ourselves as being the mind, then there's innumerable distinctions based on name and form. And we see, for example, the material scientists have created such a complex set of definitions and perceptions based on name and form that they have to specialize to keep up with any given field. That there are so many names and forms in their universe. But actually, just one will do, and that is the heart. And not the physical heart, but the heart of consciousness, pure awareness. As he says here, the nature of the mind is to remain clear. Well then, why are our minds full of so many thoughts, distracting us and often conflicting? Well, it's because of desires. We cling to so many desires. And actually, we use this as a basis for our identity, isn't it? If I want to become a great musician, if somebody asks, well, who are you? And I reply, oh, I'm a musician. It may not be that I'm a great musician yet, but I have the desire to become a musician. So I put myself out like that. I wear that as a name and form. You know, I start to dress like a musician, talk like a musician. Hey, cool, man, you know, groovy. I don't know what the slang is these days. But when I was a musician, you had to wear, you know, a broad-brimmed hat, kind of pulled down over your eyes, and psychedelic clothes, you know. But that is not really who I am. The nature of the mind is clear and empty like space. Why? Because the mind is a mirror. It does not contribute anything of its own. It simply reflects what is put before it by the senses and by consciousness. And ultimately, the mind reflects the self with a capital S. And that's when we transcend all name and form concepts of reality, identity, the body, the senses, the mind, thoughts, and so on and so on. All these things are perceived. Therefore, they are outside the self, which is the perceiver. The self perceives, and the mind, reflecting those different impressions received from the senses, along with the consciousness of the self, seems to be active and conscious. But just because a mirror reflects an accurate image of what's before it, do we think that it's conscious? No. The mirror is simply a physical object, dull and inert like every other physical object. But it has this special property of reflection. And similarly, the mind is able to reflect like a mirror whatever is put before it, whatever is within its range, including the consciousness of the self. The self illuminates the mind. And because of this, the mind seems active. It seems functional. It seems to know things. But really, it's just a mirror. It's just like a computer that has so many thoughts in it. And those thoughts can be of the senses. They can be about name and form. They can be about consciousness. Or, in its natural state, the mind can be empty. Now, great sages down throughout history have recommended meditation on emptiness, especially the Buddha. He gave a whole system of meditation called jhanas. Jhana is simply the Sanskrit word dhyana, but used in vernacular in the Pali language, which, although it's a synthetic language, was kind of a polyglot of the vernacular of the day when the Buddha preached his sermons in North India. So he would preach in ordinary language, not in Sanskrit, as was the custom of the learned, but he would preach in such a way that anybody could understand. So he used the local slang or vernacular wherever he was. So these jhanas are divided into two, the mundane and the transcendental, or the worldly and the unworldly. And at the height of jhanas are nothingness and neither perception nor non-perception. Because when the mind is made completely empty, in other words, it's not reflecting anything. This is emptiness. So not only are there no objects, there's no time, no space, no becoming, no phenomena, no change, nothingness. And in this space of nothingness, it's very hard to know if you're perceptive or not perceptive. Hence the next stage, neither perception nor non-perception. Because how do you know if there's nothing to perceive or if you're perceiving nothing? So then the question comes up, who is it that's perceiving nothing? And that, of course, has to be the self with a capital S. Because the self is pure awareness without an object. So even if you're not perceiving any objects, even if there's no content in the mind, even if the mirror is just facing a blank room or a blank space, still we are aware, and we're aware that we're aware. So this is the self, and this is the ultimate meditation. This is the highest self-realization. This is enlightenment. Aum Tat Sat. Aum Shakti Aum.